Hey everybody, I want to show you a quick example of using the AI functions in Dremio. So back to that repo where I have all those SQL examples, there's one that is called recipes. This is a very simple example. If you want to see much more complicated examples, there's the logistics AI and the media AI examples. You can just run those as is, but again, read through the comments so you can see exactly sort of what's going on. Let's take a look at this recipes example. It's really simple. Essentially what we're doing is we're creating like 3 recipes in a table. And these recipes basically have ingredients that are just an array of ingredients. The question is this a spicy recipe, or is this a mild recipe? Is this a medium recipe? What is this? Okay, and just based on a list of ingredients, there's no hard fast rule. Okay, um, but it can be inferred by an AI. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to take each array of ingredients and turn it into a string that we then pass to the AI and say, hey, is this mild, spicy, or medium? And then that turns into a field that's either going to be one of those 3 values. Okay, so you can see here we use this AI classify function. I'm saying, so I create a string that starts off with identify the spice level, and then we take that array and turn it into a string. That's the ingredients array. And then the second argument is the list of options of the classification. And then again, we're just returning that as a field, spice level, it's recipes. So let's run that so you can actually see that at work. So I'm going to copy that. And then we just go to the SQL runner. Open up a new tab. Okay, and you can see here, there's all the SQL. I will just run it. Okay, and then again, this when you're doing the AI functions, it is going to be making calls to the underlying AI model. Now, by default, it is OpenAI behind the scenes. So notice the way I did these arguments. So generally, there could be a first argument where you specify the model. Okay, and I'll come back to that. Notice I'm only passing in the other arguments, which is the prompt and the options. All the AI functions generally have this optional first argument, which is the model. Okay, I didn't specify the model. When you do that, by default, it'll just use the Dremio AI model, meaning basically OpenAI managed by Dremio. Okay, so that'll all worked out. But let's say you did want to configure your own models. That would be under organization settings. So this would be something that the admin would have to do, the organization admin. And you'll see here that there's this AI configuration section. Okay, and then theoretically here, you can add a model provider. So then you can choose sort of, hey, what model, name, provide the authentication information, which, basically in this case, which models are allowed, okay, and what's going to be the default model if they don't specify one, okay. So you can do that, okay, and then again, if you provide your own AI model, you're using your own AI account, again, that would also reduce Dremio consumption because then you would be consuming your own tokens from your account with one of these AI providers. Okay, in the same way that if you provided your own storage as the backing storage for the catalog in a project, then you're not paying for Dremio managed storage. Okay. At the end of the day, Dremio is an open platform, meaning any of the things that we charge for, there are ways to swap it out for something else if you want to use something else. Even compute, in a sense, because the catalog is using Apache Polaris, an open Iceberg Lakehouse catalog, so you can connect things like Spark and DuckDB to the catalog to run queries against that catalog. So, the times where you must you kind of have to use Dremio is when you're working with non-Iceberg data sources. So when you want to do federated queries, because Dremio is a federated query engine, and other engines won't necessarily know how to federate queries over different sources, and nor do Iceberg catalogs carry information for sort of external sources in that way currently. So, but the point is, to the extent that Dremio can basically give you the option to bring your own stuff whenever it can, it does. It's an open platform. It's the open Lakehouse platform. Okay. But now that we established that you could add your own model, let's go take a look at that data. So I'm going to go back to my first project. And we go right over here. I'm going to go to Dremio. We're going to go to recipes. That was the example. So again, just first we'll see the original table. So you see the original table is just going to be these 3 records and these arrays of ingredients. Okay. And then if I go to the other table, Dremio recipes, recipes enhanced, this is using the AI Okay, and then if I scroll a little further down, or there it is. You see the spice level is medium spicy. In this case, none of them are mild. But again, this was all done dynamically by the one caveat I would want to point out in this case is that if you save it as a view like I did, that means it's going to do that AI. It's going to pass it to the AI every time because a view isn't physical. So when you are using AI to classify things, there is probably a decent chance in many use cases you're going to prefer to treat it as a physical table. So instead of doing like create view, I would probably do something like a create table as the result of this query. So that way you create a new iceberg table, and that way when people query that iceberg table, they're not recalculating all these AI results. Okay, so again, there are times where it's better to, I would say vast majority of the time, it's better to connect your data and do most of your work as views. Oftentimes, then I would say pretty much when you're dealing with like information that you don't want calculated dynamically, like these AI fields, like you want them to be calculated like one time and then not change, then I would physically manifest them. Okay, and just keep that in mind when you use like AI functions and when you're using like SQL views versus creating tables. These are just things to kind of keep in mind. But yeah, so that gives you a tour of sort of like how to use these AI functions. Again, if you want to see the other AI functions at work, check out the media example, logistics AI, media AI. They're there. And again, when you're in the SQL editor, you can see all these functions right there. So see AI classify, AI complete, AI generate. Okay, so essentially, just to give you a quick. Essentially, AI classify, what you just saw, basically says, hey, given this prompt, give me one of these options. AI complete basically says, given this prompt, give me a text response. That's the field. Okay, this is for like generally like generating descriptions. And then like AI generate is for like generating an actual like table. Okay, you want like a little table based on the output. So again, hey, if you read the logistics example, like basically there's all these like drivers notes. So basically the drivers have just handwritten notes for each ride they were on. And then it takes that and turns that into like a little mini table, so that way you can like better run analytics on the notes that the drivers had written down, because it puts them into a uniform structure. And then you can then puts it in as a struct, and then you flatten the struct. Again, I'll let you refer to that example. But yeah, that's the AI functions. They can be really cool. Again, the AI functions can also doesn't just have to be off a table. It can be off like images or PDF files that you have sitting in your data lake. So if you read the documentation, it goes a little bit more into how you do that. But essentially, if you have a folder of PDFs, you'll just use like this list files function that essentially creates a table that has all the information for each file, and then you would use that to trigger these functions. So with that, hopefully you guys enjoy that. I'll see y'all later.